Deconstructing Introductions, the Shared Context or Rhetorical Situation. This video is part 2 of the Deconstructing Introduction series, a series intended to train you in the art of crafting the 7 elements of an introduction for research writing. The shared context, like the rest of the introduction, serves an orienting role. That is, it orients readers to the context, scope, and motivation for the essay. It clarifies the shared space that readers will be entering as they read the essay. Some call this orienting role the act of teaching and locating, teaching readers what they need to know to understand the critical argumentative work that they'll be reading, as well as locating the essay in the discipline or historical moment. The shared context is where the writer supplies readers with the information they need to know in order to understand the research question. The shared context educates readers about the background of the object of study and any initial background material necessary to understand the topic or question. As with all elements of the introduction, what you include in this section and how long it will be depends on your role as a researcher and the identity of your audience. If your target audience happens to be well informed about the topic or well acquainted with the research question, you may need less backgrounding information. The inverse is true for an audience that likely has less mastery of the context that your essay is entering. Every research essay creates a shared space with readers, and this shared space or context represents the intersection of historical, disciplinary, methodological, and practical background information. However, only some of that information needs to be included at this point in the essay. Think of this example. Suppose I were writing on current race relations and was answering the question, what role should the church play in improving race relations in America? This topic and question instantly creates a huge shared context that functions as a hub for all kinds of background information and concerns. I'm assuming some background definitions. What do I mean by race? Who am I referring to as the church? I'm raising some historical concerns. How did we get here? How has the church previously responded? I'm engaging a few different disciplines, at the very least theology, sociology, anthropology, and political theory. I'm dealing with some practical problems. I'm writing as a white male. People have different experiences, different kinds of trauma. As you can hear, the shared context is overwhelmingly large, but this is the space writers are calling readers into. So it is the role of the research writer to wade through this shared context and determine what aspects of this context readers need up front in order to make sense of the research question. Much of this background information will show up throughout the essay, even if not included in this section. Thus, for my essay, suppose the hook already focused me in on Southern Baptist responses to tensions between Black Americans and white Americans. After surveying some of these historical cultural responses in the hook, I decided to leave the issue of definitions for later in the essay, since redefining what we mean by race features prominently in my approach to a solution. For the purpose of my shared context section, I choose rather to mention that although sociologists, anthropologists, and political theorists all continue to multiply proposals, my interest and concern in this essay focuses on a theological, ethical solution to the ongoing tensions, especially with an eye to the last several years. Thus, in the hook and shared context section, I have not only prepared my readers for my question, but also limited my scope, clarifying how my essay fits into the huge hub of interrelated background information. The value of the shared context section is that it helps readers know what to expect. It clarifies the writer's framework, and it situates the question, making sense of exactly what the writer is asking and wanting the reader to understand. When crafting the shared context, it is important to think of this section in relation to the hook, which comes before, and the research question which follows it. After all, these are interrelated elements of an introduction, so they should be coherent and involve seamless transitions. If you have not already introduced your object of study or given clues to your discipline or field in your hook, then do so in the shared context. In an essay on John Milton's depiction of Satan in Paradise Lost, my shared context should, at the very least, introduce my framework, the object of study, and the topic in view. Consider this example. How does a text move beyond neutrality and become a prophetic voice in the life of the reader? As scholar Stanley Fish notes, books mysteriously read the reader, illumining the reader's soul through formal features in the text. Reading is a dialogical experience of the text that exposes the reader's guilt and prompts introspection and transformation which the judicious author must facilitate. As an archetypal model of this facilitation, John Milton demonstrates his influence within the reader through Satan's soliloquies in Paradise Lost. Intrigued by Milton's effect upon their soul, readers may wonder, how does the reader experience Satan in the dialogue of Paradise Lost? The highlighted portion represents the shared context for this essay. What comes before, in the form of a question, is the hook. Since I have not already done so in the hook, I use the shared context section to hint at my framework, some kind of literary criticism in conversation with Stanley Fish's reader response approach. I introduce the object of study, Paradise Lost, and I even highlight the topic, Milton's use of Satan, specifically in Satan's soliloquies. Note that the shared context gives some clues as to the underlying problem or debate I will later engage, the role of the author and reader in the text. As you can see, once you have read this backgrounding information in the shared context, you are sufficiently prepared for the research question. Note that the shared context is neither the literature review nor the counterargument section in your essay, so avoid treating it as such. Besides failing to properly introduce your question, the other danger writers encounter with the shared context is the tendency to overwhelm readers with information that they do not need until later. Fronting extensive background information before your question, problem, and thesis may obscure your argument and saddle readers with more information than they need or can manage at this point in the essay. Readers do not need to know about everything ever written about Satan in Paradise Lost in order to understand my research question. However, they may need some of this information categorized as approaches later in the counterargument section in order to see the viability and advantage of my argument. But they don't need this information up front. Readers need enough information to orient them to the topic and question, enough to create informed suspense, a situated awareness of a problem or question, and an expectation to find its solution. The only way readers will adequately sense this suspense is if you are carefully crafting the shared context to orient them and intensify or focus the motivation aroused by the hook. Thank you for watching this overview video. To continue the series in sequence, look for the next video on the hook or prelude. Or if you have questions or would like help on one of these specific introductory elements, please feel free to skip ahead to the corresponding video. Thank you, and keep writing. Thank you for watching this video on crafting the shared context or rhetorical situation. To continue the series in sequence, look for the next video on the research question. Or if you have questions or would like help on one of these specific introductory elements, please feel free to skip ahead to the corresponding video. Thank you, and keep writing.